Hey guys, welcome back to our channel where we are passionate about helping people with business and accounting. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the James Charles lawsuit. Now, I'm not going to break down the legal side of that. Emily D. Baker has an amazing video breaking down the law when it comes down to this lawsuit. What we are going to be focused on is what we as business owners can do to mitigate the risk of being sued or being in the position that James Charles is in. And if we do get sued by an employee, what we can do to protect our company. So if you're interested, keep on watching. So before we jump into this video, I just want to put out a disclaimer. I am not an attorney and I'm not pretending to be one on the tube. We are simply just going to be talking about this lawsuit and talking about what we can do as employers to protect ourselves when it comes to hiring an employee. And I also want to say that this is just the plaintiff's side of the lawsuit. We are not going to talk about the defendant's side. We're not going to get into the details of the actual lawsuit. Like I said in the intro, check out Emily D. Baker's video on this topic. It's amazing. The breakdowns that she does when it comes to law are amazing. She breaks it down in layman's terms so everyone can understand. So check her out after this video. So there are 10 causes of action in this lawsuit. So the first one is failure to pay all wages upon separation under Labor Code 201. So when you have employees and you terminate an employee or they are no longer employed at your organization, you have the responsibility to pay them the wages that they earned. So when you separate with someone, whether it be voluntary or involuntary, and they leave your organization, you have to pay them for their time that they worked, okay? You can't withhold pay. You can't say, oh, well, they kept my computer, I'm going to withhold their pay from that. You have to pay them their earnings. You also want to make sure that you're complying with your state. Each state has different labor laws as far as timing of when you pay the employee, okay? So your best friend, when terminating someone, regardless of how big or small you are, is going to be an HR consultant if you don't have a payroll specialist on staff. Most small businesses do not have a payroll specialist on staff. I work with a ton of businesses and most of them have employees and they do not have, a payroll person designated. So when you are terminating services with an individual, make sure that you reach out to a consultant, an HR consultant, to make sure that you're doing things correctly. The HR consultant will guide you as far as timing, will guide you if you have to pay them out PTO and all of the requirements in your state. So if you don't have an HR consultant, you need to find one in your state to help you in that situation. All right, cause of action number 2. Failure to provide minimum wage compensation. And they state 1, 2, 3 labor codes. So we all know that there is minimum wage compensation, okay? So when you have an hourly employee, you need to pay them at least minimum wage. Now, 2 and 3 are going to work together. So number 3, cause of action 3 is failure to provide overtime and double time compensation. So when you have an hourly employee, if they've worked over 40 hours, they are entitled to overtime and in some cases, double time compensation. Now, here is where timesheets are vital to an organization. So if you have employees and they are hourly employees, you must have them submit timesheets, because if they ever come back and say, I worked overtime and you didn't pay me, you can pull up the timesheet and say, no, you said you worked 40 hours. You signed off on this timesheet saying you worked 40 hours. So this is where, as an employer, the support, the documentation is key in the organization, because when you have a disgruntled employee, they're going to bring back issues from way back when, and you need to be able to go back to that time period, pull the support and say, no, here it is, right? And that's just going to be helpful in this type of cases. And the payroll reports are going to easily prove what the person was paid. So if they're claiming that you didn't pay them overtime and the payroll report says you didn't pay them overtime, this is where the timesheet is going to be key in this type of lawsuit. So cause of action number 4 is waiting time penalties. So this is probably going to go back to the failure to pay their last paycheck. So again, when you terminate someone, you have to pay them in a reasonable time period. So cause of action number 5 is disability discrimination. And they're referencing a state law there. So you can't discriminate against someone that has a disability as an employer. Before we go any further in this video, please consider subscribing to our channel and give this video a big thumbs up. And now let's get back to the video. So cause of action 5 and 6 are going to work together. So 5 is saying disability discrimination, and they're referencing state code. And number 6 is failure to provide reasonable accommodation. And again, they're referencing a state code. So as an employer, you have responsibilities when you have an individual who has a disability. And so you have to provide reasonable accommodations. And the key there is going to be reasonable. And this is where you want to make sure that you're working with an HR consultant or specialist to help you, because you don't want to put the organization in a bad situation, but you also want to make sure that you're abiding by your state laws. Cause of action number 7, failure to engage in good faith interactive processes. And here we're referencing another state code. And again, this goes back to failure to provide accommodations to an individual that has a disability. 8 and 9 are both retaliation. One is a state code that they're referencing, and another one is a labor code that they're referencing. And then item number 10 is wrongful termination. And so that's the breakdown of the James Charles lawsuit as far as causes of action. And again, we're not going to really go in detail into all of these things, especially on the legal side of it. Emily D. Baker, man, if you really want to get in the know of this lawsuit, I would check out her video. And again, this is all alleged. We don't know James Charles' side. We don't know what the processes Sister LLC has. Hopefully they have documentation as far as payroll support and timesheets. I feel confident that they would, because in the lawsuit, Emily mentioned something about an employment contract, which is amazing. Most small businesses do not have employment contracts with their employees. If you don't, that may be something that you want to consult an attorney with and possibly get an employment contract. Another important HR document you want is an employee handbook. This employee handbook usually outlines all of the requirements that a company expects from their employee. And so you have them sign it, and that way you have legal documentation saying these are expectations that we have as an employer, and you will abide by them. If you don't, then we can terminate your employment. So again, HR consultants, if you have employees, you want to reach out to someone when you're getting started so you have solid processes in place, and especially when you will terminate an employee. Other processes that you want to have when you have someone that isn't working out is make sure that you have performance reviews with this individual. If it's getting to a point where they're late or they're not meeting deadlines, then you want to have meetings with the individual, and you want to make sure these meetings are documented. So if you're going to reprimand someone for lack of performance, you want to make sure that it's in writing and that they sign off on it. Meaning, hey, I gave you warnings and you did not listen, so this is why we are terminating you. So documentation is key with having employees, okay? And if you're ever in a situation where you are in a lawsuit like James Charles is, then you want to make sure that you have solid employment records for the individuals, because as an employer, you have to make a decision. Do I want to fight this in court, or do I want to settle? You have to outweigh the cost benefit of, trial, because that's what they're asking for in this lawsuit is demand for jury trial. So other things can come up in a jury trial. So you want to make sure that you consult with an attorney if you're in a situation that he's in, which he has. Sister LLC has an attorney, and they are, what appears to me, going to fight this. So we shall see. Again, Emily has the breakdown as far as the plaintiff side and the response by the defendant. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, share it with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.